everyone, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Rebecca, this is my channel Rebecca Reacts, and today I'm reacting to a video called How Did Britain Conquer India? Animated History. So, you know, I've done a few videos in the past where I've reacted to videos about our two countries and the history between our two countries and everything that's happened. And you know, it is a horrible thing that happened, but it is history. As I say in every single video like this, in my country we aren't taught the history between our two countries, and it's actually ridiculous that we're not taught how Britain conquered India. So yeah, that's why I enjoy watching these videos, because I learn a lot, but also it makes me slightly uncomfortable. But it is history, so you know, we know not to repeat these things and make sure they don't happen again, so we can learn from it and yeah, just make sure it doesn't happen again. So this is the video we're reacting to today. Sorry, the sun keeps coming in and out of clouds, so the lighting might be a bit strange today. But yeah, if this sounds like your sort of content, definitely hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you know when I next upload. And if you have any other videos you want me to react to, please put the links to them in the comments below. But let's go on with the video.
This video was made possible by Squarespace. Whether you need a domain, online store, or website, make it with Squarespace. Hi, I'm Griffin Johnson, the Armchair Historian. Today's episode, how the British Empire was able to assert control over India. The Indian subcontinent was subjugated by an island more than 20 times smaller in size. This unimaginable conquest of what would become the jewel in the British crown greatly empowered the British Empire. By the middle of the 19th century, British rule led to a new wave of South Asian nationalist movements, the effects to which are still felt to this day. But we're not going to be delving into too much detail about the consequences of British rule. Rather, our goal is to evaluate what actions taken by the British and Indians alike paved the way for British rule in the first place. In order to understand how the British were able to take control of India, we need to go back to New Year's Eve on 1600, well into the reign of Elizabeth I. It was her signature on a royal charter granted to a group of adventure merchants, later known as the East India Company, that would change the destinies of two nations forever. However, at the time, the company's leaders were not yet interested in trading directly with the reigning Indian power of the time. Instead, they focused on competing with the Dutch, French, and Portuguese in the East Indies. But over time, the East India Company, after being driven out of the East Indies, shifted its focus onto the Indian subcontinent. In 1640, a company representative succeeded in securing a grant of land in southern India, a pivotal moment, as it marked the first time that Indian land was owned directly by the English. It was on this land that they constructed Fort St. George. The settlement that grew around this region became the thriving city of Madras, now known as Chennai, and home to over 7 million people. As more and more company-owned forts and settlements sprang up all over the Indian subcontinent, the English became a leading exporter of spices, which, in the words of Brian Gardner, author of the East India Company, had a considerable place in life. Men were prepared to die in search of them, and many did. No gift was more acceptable, and to be well supplied was a mark of status. Wealth could be measured in spices. Wow. The French, Danish, and Dutch all became similarly active in Indian affairs from the 17th century onwards, with the Portuguese already established in the region. Joining me now is our good friend History with Hilbert, who will be providing us with some background information on the Mughal Empire.
As the 18th century commenced, the Europeans became increasingly involved in Indian affairs. They could afford to, because the Mughal Empire, which once ruled over not just the majority of India, but also parts of modern-day Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh, was on the decline in the wake of very costly wars of conquest. The Mughals suffered from repeated invasions by Persians, Afghans, and other Indians. In 1739, the Mughal capital, Delhi, was sacked by the Persian ruler Nader Shah, following the decisive Battle of Kurna, and in 1748, Nader Shah's protege, the Afghan Ahmed Shah Durrani, also led his armies into Mughal territory, beginning his own invasion. Due to these factors, by the middle of the 18th century, the Mughal emperor took the role of a figurehead to many new empowered local rulers. If you'd like to check out my video that goes into more detail about the Mughals, then follow the link in the description below.
Thanks for joining us again, Hilbert. As the Mughals weakened, the Maratha kingdom in the central west of India was carving out an empire of its own. Despite never eclipsing the Mughal Empire at its height, the Maratha Empire remained as a dominant power in India for another 80 years or so. As all of this was happening, the East India Company began to overshadow its European competitors, devoting substantial profits to raising a private army in an effort to contend with the Maratha Empire and Bengal. By now, the East India Company benefited greatly from the country's imposing navy, which enabled it to ferry more and more men to India than its European competitors. As much as the company's military aided in its growth, it was the laissez-faire policy that won over many local rulers to their side, many of whom benefited financially from their dealings with the company and did not perceive their sovereignty to be at risk. Of all the Europeans who had established themselves in India, the British and French based in the south were now preeminent. But under the daring Robert Clive, the British East India Company's army was able to defeat both the Bengalese and their French allies at the Battle of Plassey during the 7 Years' War, which, by the 1760s, allowed them to assert control over much of the Indian subcontinent unchecked through direct territorial possession or indirect tributary arrangements. To quote Gardner once more, by the Treaty of Paris 1763, the French forts taken by the company were returned to them, some of them having been razed to the ground. But the French never recovered, and only 6 years later, the French East India Company collapsed, although the stations remained in the possession of France. Wow. During the British advance into the Indian heartland, it encountered staunch resistance from the Sikh Empire and other Indian states not interested in doing business with the English. The Duke of Wellington, who would later go on to defeat Napoleon, won several victories against these states while aiding his brother Richard Wellesley, who acted as Governor-General of India. Consequently, by the turn of the 19th century, the Wellesley brothers had succeeded in leaving behind them the foundations of an empire greater even that of Akbar himself.
It's a trap!
As the middle of the 19th century drew closer, an Indian national consciousness began to take form, as company rule resulted in a wider array of social and economic reforms being demanded from increasingly alienated local rulers. These sentiments culminated in the Indian Rebellion of 1857, also known as the Sepoy Mutiny, which was brutally suppressed and concluded with the formal dissolution of the Mughal Empire and the transfer of power from the British East India Company to Britain itself. Power now rested in the hands of the British Crown directly, and as the 19th century continued, India's resources and the livelihoods of its people were exploited to fuel the Industrial Revolution in Britain, leading to a series of famines which shook the Indian economy to the core and left millions of Indians dead. One thing was certain: the British Empire now had millions of new subjects under its rule in India, and imperial expansion wouldn't stop there. To conclude, the political vacuum left by the Mughal Empire in the wake of repeated invasions, the failure of other Indian states, particularly the Maratha Empire, to fill that vacuum and unify India, the failure of other European powers to stop the British, Britain's military and industrial superiority, and the governing policy of the East India Company allowed Britain to take over the Indian subcontinent. Thanks for watching. I'd like to thank the Armchair Historian team and my general staff on Patreon. If you're interested in British history, be sure to check out our videos on the American Revolution and the Anglo-Zulu War. Also, be sure to check out History with Hilbert's video on Mughal history, which can be found in the description below. And finally, a special thanks to our patron Brandon Wuwon for nominating this video topic. His message: Bengalese is difficult to learn. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time with our video on why Napoleon's invasion of Russia didn't go so well.
Thank you. That was really interesting. You know, like I said at the beginning of this video, this isn't what we're taught in school, so it's really interesting to learn about it now, and I'm so glad I'm learning about it. I feel like loads of people in my country need to learn about what's happened and what our country did in the past. And they showed at the end, you know, just how many other countries Britain took over. And, you know, to think that obviously the way my country took these other countries, like through war and the death and destruction that was caused, it's just horrible to think about, to be honest. And we can all hope that it just doesn't happen again, and I'm sure it won't happen again. Like, my generation won't let it happen again. And to know that India is still kind of rebuilding itself from all those years of the British reign. But, you know, I've also watched the Emerging India videos where I can see just how far you've come in recent years, which is incredible and amazing. But it's always really interesting to watch stuff like this for me. I really liked all that animation. That was really cool. It made watching, you know, this sort of video a bit more relaxing, I guess, because, you know, if you've seen some of the other ones where I've done like the history between our two countries, I've always been a bit like, oh no, it's a little bit like uncomfortable, which it should be. You know, I think it's okay for people to feel uncomfortable about this sort of thing when we're not taught about it in schools. But I think the animated side of it kind of really helped to understand what was happening and just to make it a bit more like user friendly, which was nice. So thank you to the person who said I should react to this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Thank you to my producer level patrons, and if you want to become a patron yourself, the link is always in the description below. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please feel free to hit that subscribe button. It is the best way to support me and my channel. It is the free way to support me and my channel, and it is the best way to support me and my channel. You can also find my social media links for Twitter and Instagram in the description below as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon for a new one. Bye everyone.